and thank you. My name is Erin Newton. I'm an English teacher here at Dover-Sherborn High School, but I'm also a lacrosse coach, a mother to 3, a wife, outdoor enthusiast, sometimes runner, and disability advocate and medical mom. When I first told my children I was going to give a TEDx talk about technology, they met me with side-eye glances because what could I, their mother, who couldn't turn on the TV without their help, know about technology? The truth is, I do live much more comfortably between the pages on a book than I do with the apps on my phone, and I would trade iambic pentameter any day for artificial intelligence. But the other truth is that those side-eye glances were made through the results of medical technology. In 2014, my husband and I were plunged into a medical world that we never knew existed. And we took up what would become, within time, our bravest and most beloved roles, that of medical parents. After a typical full-term pregnancy, our youngest son, Colin, came barreling into the world the color of a blueberry and faced numerous episodes of respiratory distress and feeding challenges. He was quickly propelled to Brigham and Women's Hospital, where he was met with every single department from Boston Children's Hospital. Test after test was performed and assigned and administered, and yet the brightest doctors in the world could give us no answers to our son's medical problems and mysteries. With little hope, our parish priests came to the hospital and baptized our son in the waiting room. Our journey, though, with medical technology did not begin on that first admission. But it began when a month later, we met Dr. Robert Graham and Lauren Perlman of the Boston Children's Hospital CAPE team. The CAPE team stands for Critical Care, Anesthesia, Perioperative Extension, and Home Ventilation Program. Try to say that 3 times fast. It's a grassroots program that was founded in 2007 by Dr. Robert Graham, an ICU intensivist, and Lauren Perlman, a respiratory therapist. They recognized that there was a deficit in the healthcare system, that children with healthcare needs and medical technology dependency were transitioning home from the hospital without much in the way of additional family supports. So together, they formed this grassroots program. Today, it cares for some of the most complex children in the state and across the world. There's 400 local and worldwide patients who are living at home with advanced medical technology. It serves as an extension to the home and to the hospital care, making house calls. It comprises of 2 doctors, 2 nurse practitioners, a respiratory therapist, and a social worker. It provides both support and coordination care for patients with complex healthcare needs. The primary goal of the Boston Children's Hospital CAPE team is to improve the quality of lives of patients living outside of the hospital and who are experiencing chronic disease. Working alongside families, the CAPE team cares for patients both in the hospital and at home. The comprehensive list of care is exhaustive. It includes not monthly, but sometimes it feels that way, monthly, bi-yearly appointments at home in the comfort of the own home. It also includes emergency calls to troubleshoot respiratory distress, as well as technology support, assistance with school placements and IEPs, and the help acquiring medical equipment and securing travel plans. Years before the pandemic made virtual healthcare calls ubiquitous, the CAPE team was performing telehealth with patients across the country, some of whom live in countries as far away as Ukraine and Iceland, as well as in various countries in the Middle East and South America. Whereas other doctors prepared us to watch our son wither, Dr. Graham and Lauren carved a path forward, and it was a path through medical technology. In his infancy, our son Colin was incredibly weak. He could not move a muscle. And his breathing was so rapid. It was as if he was running a marathon while he was sleeping in his crib. To regulate his breathing, the CAPE team introduced BiPAP, by positive air pressure, which would help to mimic the breathing to increase Colin's lung capacity. To assist with airway maintenance and clearance, they introduced a cough assist machine, which would help to declog secretions and produce an effective cough. And to help keep his airway clear, they introduced a suction machine that would allow us to manually remove secretions that built up in his airways. On the day all of the hospital equipment arrived in the hospital room, Dr. Graham looked at me and he said, "Well, it's not what you expected for a baby shower, but in time you'll overlook it all." Now, as a young mother, I could never imagine overlooking the medical equipment. And yet, today, 10 years later, I can attest to the absolutely mundane normalcy of parenting a child whose everyday life depends on medical technology. At home, we began, there we go. At home, we began the balancing acts that would become our new normal. Stroller walks with a feeding pump and a suction machine, and bedtime stories with BiPAP. Our daughters arranged their little frozen figurines around medical equipment, and it turns out that that feeding pole makes a really good indoor gym. With the support of the CAPE team, we stretched our comfort zones and traveled beyond our home's walls. We packed our car with diaper bags and baby toys and a ventilator, a suction machine, a feeding pump, oxygen, nebulizers, syringes, and much more medical supplies than you could ever imagine. Our traveling ICU started to visit parents and grandparents and cousins locally, and then we traveled outside of Massachusetts to neighboring states in New England. If Colin was born in a different decade, one without medical technology, his life would be confined to an institution and he'd be tethered to a wall with wires and tubes. But instead, because Boston Children's Hospital sought FDA approval for infant use of BiPAP and then gifted us the knowledge of medical technology, Colin's childhood has been full of endless moments of typical family life. Ooh, hold on. There have been birthday parties and cousin sleepovers and trick-or-treating with neighbors. And there have also been epic adventures. We've been traveling on boats to remote islands, snorkeling with sharks and barracuda, as well as swimming with dolphins, to which Colin will confidently say he has made out with a dolphin. And this past winter, we took on the feat of skiing down Loon's Double Black Diamonds. Yet interspersed with our family adventures, our days of living with medical technology are also punctuated by real-life threatening medical events. Colin's medical fragility is serious. It's akin to living in that early pandemic state, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. He has endured 5 hospitalizations for respiratory failure and 14 intensive surgeries. Just last month, Colin began choking in our kitchen while I was making dinner. Quickly, his in-home nurse and I assessed his airway and then used his suction machine to dislodge extra secretions. We saved him within our home from suffocation. Medical crisis averted, life returned back to normalcy. I made dinner, I dropped my daughter off at lacrosse practice, and I revised my lesson plans for the next day. The paramount example, though, of living at home with medical technology and the assistive care of the CAPE team actually occurred when Colin was 3 years old. It's by far one of our favorite stories. Colin had endured an intensive respiratory failure, lung collapse, that should have landed him back in Boston Children's Hospital. However, instead of preparing our bags for the hospital, the doorbell rang. Dr. Robert Graham of Boston Children's Hospital Critical Care Perioperative Home Extension and Ventilation Program was cross-country skiing in the nearby town of Weston, Massachusetts with his daughter. On his rare day off, he stopped from skiing in order to check in on Colin because he knew that he was facing medical distress. Within the comfort of our own home, he donned his stethoscope, administered an ICU-level examination, adjusted the settings on Colin's BiPAP equipment, ordered new scripts for CVS, all while wearing his ski boots and ski leggings. A few days later, Colin's health regained, and instead of packing our bags for the hospital, we were packing for a ski family vacation. A few years later, Dr. Graham and his daughter would trade in their cross-country skis and join us for skiing in the White Mountains at Loon Mountain. And that picture in the far is that day when we skied together. Navigating a life with medical equipment has empowered us not just to become advocates for Colin, but for other children as well. First, we set our sights at raising funds and awareness for the life-saving program that not only gifted us with Colin's life, but allowed us to continue living our life as a family. Over a 3-year span, we raised over $75,000 for the Boston Children's Hospital CAPE program. This money allowed the CAPE program to set up some funding for patients and families who were in need and may not have received insurance approval for additional supportive equipment and care. And just 2 weeks ago, my youngest brother, father of 5 children of his own, ran the Boston Marathon with the Miles for Miracles Boston Children's Hospital team. Once we gained confidence in navigating our family life, we set our advocacy skills to changing our community for students with disabilities and advanced medical needs. In our town, the playgrounds at the elementary schools were outdated, archaic, and out of compliance with ADA. Whereas the classrooms were teaching inclusivity and acceptance, the playgrounds were teaching practices antithetical to these teaching practices. At recess, when other children played on the playground, my son lapped a ramp to join his friends and play. And those little wood chips on the bottom of the playground disrupted his mobility and left him virtually paralyzed on the side of the field. Not only did Colin's self-esteem suffer from this social exclusion, but all the children in his class learned that it was okay for some children to sit out while other children play. And every child at that school learned that exclusion and discrimination was tolerable. Well, it wasn't for us. So, just as we plunged ourselves into medical advocacy for our son, we took on small town politics. And we met with the local school board, Selectmen, Recreation Commission, and pushed for accessible playgrounds for all students. An article was drafted, funds were allocated, a town meeting was voted in favor of renovating the playgrounds at 2 elementary schools. At the town meeting, I spoke fervently on behalf of the accessibility in updating our playgrounds, while Colin and his friend Ben, both wheelchair users whose lives depend on medical technology, sat holding signs saying, "We want to play." And now that playground looks a lot happier and more inclusive. Medical technology is rapidly advancing. Children who in previous years would not have survived infancy are now entering elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and college campuses across the country. They attend classes with their neurotypical peers. They take the MCAS in the same room as other students, and they complain about homework, just like every single student across America. Their backpacks contain lunches, books, and notes from peers, as well as ventilators, feeding pumps, and suction machines. In addition to the typical challenges that these students face, such as making friends and finding peers to play with and studying for tests, they are also presented with the hurdles of navigating inaccessible classrooms and schools and playgrounds, all while maneuvering with their medical equipment. As medical technology has outpaced family and community resources, it has ushered in a new generation of advocacy needs. On a basic level, acceptance of varying medical needs must be augmented, and school inclusivity must be addressed. Across the state of Massachusetts, a state renowned for its educational practices and policies, there are children every year who do not attend school, not because they are sick or on vacation, but because the school cannot care for them safely within a school setting. For the last 7 years, my husband and I have worked with our school district to ensure that Colin's medical needs were safely met while he's in school. Despite our Herculean efforts, there are days that Colin has not attended school, not because he was sick or on vacation, but because there was no nurse who could care for him within the school setting. His story, though, it's not unique. Fellow parents of children with advanced technology repeat the same story that we have told. I belong to the Mass Health Community Case Care Management Parent Group, and every parent within that group of about 300 or so now repeats the same story. Their children sit at home while their peers learn because there was not a nurse to care for them within the school day. From these parents, I have shared my experience in the dual role as a mother and a teacher in navigating the IEP process, as well as the school setting with medical technology. And from them, I also learned how to help schools address special healthcare needs within the school environment. Collectively, we give voice to the most underrepresented group of students and ensure that inclusivity in our schools progress as the technology changes the student population. In our family, we don't take mundane moments for granted. And although we live for the present, we know that advocating for change for the future and the technological future is important. We have cultivated change within our family, within our community, and we hope to change the world. Today, our son Colin is a thriving 4th grade student at Claypit Hill Elementary School in Wayland, Massachusetts. He loves Legos, he loves drawing, he loves to video game, he loves to give the occasional swear word and inappropriate joke. He dreams of growing up to be a cartoonist and an author, and he promises to never live too far away from me. Every breath, every laugh, and every dream that he has had is because of the medical life-saving technology that has allowed him to thrive and live outside of the hospital. Thank you.